presenters. I am grateful to Dr. Mrs. Nekham and Dr. Sudhir Nekham for giving me this opportunity to chair the session. Thank you very much.
I thank the chairperson and referees to this session for making it convenient to come and grace this occasion. I request Dr. Prakash Patil to present a bouquet as a token of gratitude. Anamitra Chatterjee, Aditi Dev. I invite our paper presenters to the stage, please.
From Pure Constituent College, Balbalraj. I'm here going to present my paper. The topic of the paper is Anil K. Sharma's Lucky Lady and K.L. Jakir's Karmavali, a figure of human relations in days of partition. So here, a post-colonial treatise par excellence, Karmavali is a post-colonial treatise, but is definitely shadowed by the colonial proceeds of partition which witnessed its hydra across the geographical boundaries of Asia, East Europe, and balkanization of countries on post-colonial lines. The novel is engulfed in a red storm, blowing away the feminine modesty of mannerism, but unfazed woman Karmavali still maintains her dignity amidst the tearful adieu on both sides of the border. The reverential references to the icons of theology have a special mention to avoid the poetry of Isaac, the sensitive subjectivity of the novel, subtle tools of refinery and fitness have injected a new progressive elements of critical appreciation of historicity in its fiction literature. So let's have a look at the ending of the novel, which is unique in its pathos because it includes blessings of humanity. All may be bestowed with blessings in their homes. It reverberates the love of woman for her husband may be deceased. She said, "Faz my mandatory, my lover, my lord." The posturation of a pious and devout lady in her demise could not be better, which has been presented by the author. I have closed my eyes and my head, bowed in reverence and hands in prayer. The places treated by the saints do become hallowed and sacrosanct by a commoner's grave can be so eulogized by the author is marvelous in its description with light and fragrance. Chapter number 240. Graveyard has no darkness, all graves are lit with the light of the lamp of Faja's grave. Angels are showering flowers on graves of all. In this novel, we are here to discover the facts, the time of the partition, when India and Pakistan goes to the partition period. So animals also miss their old habitat. So why not the person? Why not the people? Those who were suffering, who were the sufferers of the partition. A subtle suggestion in the beginning of the novel predicts its pathos of partition of the country, families and human relations. She said, "Me, the lady with the luck, Karmavali is my name." So Karmavali is not a name of the woman. She is representative of all the women, those who were surviving in that particular period. Thus begins the episodes of Karmavali snapping its path through the rural footpaths, street of towns, highways, railway platforms, and by-lanes of refugee camps. Rows of graveyards dotting the subcontinent and rows of tears dotting the human face. The nicknames like Karmo, just look at the pictures. The nicknames like Karmo suggest the rustic as well as well-knitted family bonds prevalent in both sides of Punjab, that is India and Pakistan. Karma grows and becomes Karmavati, a married woman, a mother, a latter a widow. Thus, journey of human relations has many sojourns. The ending of the novel is in consonance with the spirit of the beginning. In the end, Karmavali Soilavati remembers all the characters in her life, and the writer is suggestive of the reminder to read, to recall the entire persona and their respective performing art. She is saying, I am pouring oil in the lamps and chanting name of Khushia, Fatima and Javed, and remembering Naz Singh, Granthi and Jamil Kaur, who picked up my son from a street and gave shelter, protection of 4 walls, and gave instructions to stick to his faith, and Guru Nanak's high ideals of friendship were maintained. Sai Qutbuddin is in front of my eyes, who gave such a nice girl like Fatima and Khushia and refined his forlorn life. My eyes are on Ramcharan and his wife Ratno, who kept safe my house as an instrument, and they, in it rains, kept intact with the falling walls of the houses. So when Muhammad Ali Jinnah's direct action for partition, that today is direct action day, now might alone can secure right. So this direct action was unleashed in Calcutta on 16th August, as it is recorded in the history. As planned, and the orgy of violence, killings, stabbings, looting, erosion and rape continued for 3 days. This was a bitter foretaste of the tragedy which was to culminate at the time of partition. K.L. Jakir plotted the theme of partition in Karmavali. Anil K. Sharma has translated the novel in its entire sensitivity and soul. The dialogue and monologue have kept their intrinsic meaningfulness without allowing the translation to eat vitals of the author's inevitable message of humanity. I am not bothered with the darkness of night and last blowing winds. I am feeling as if the blaze of lamp burning on the grave of Lazarus has been converted into a big blazing flame, and its light has spread far and wide and towering to the sky. And with the fast and clear light, the borders of the world at last are enclosed in each other, and the world is lit large with light. So no border, no wall, no ditch, no lodge, all have melted into a pot of light. The whole creation is sinking in light, the light and bathing in the light, a newer and very long phrase is touching 2 sides, far and wide, and it is connecting one hemisphere of the earth with another. So, Anil K. Sharma, in his review, he has rightly remarked that focusing his lesser beings on both sides of the borders created by the politicians and theologians. He said, Darwesh bhi ayyar the and Sultan bhi, or Sultan bhi ayyar. Spirituality smacked the spell, and rulers were the magicians. Rulers were the magicians. I have given very less time. So, Sri Kashmir Lal Jakir, the writer of the novel Karmavali, admits that he has not lived life, he has suffered life all these 9 long decades. He has tried to build bridges of human relationships throughout his life and wished the people of both the countries to forget the wars of yesteryears and welcome each other as they have been plotting from centuries. He is hopeful and optimistic, thus says, ये और बात है कि आगे हवा के रखे हैं, चिराग जितने भी रखे हैं, हमने जला कर रखे हैं. So no matter lamps are placed in front of the wings, all wicks are in flames, whatever may be the number. So this is the life of the Karmavali presented in this novel. So Anil K. Sharma writes in his review, the inputs of romance, high-handedness, lewd eyes, corruption, morality and immorality, crime and punishment syndrome, moneyed people and poor people, tradition and its wreckage, high and low postures of politics, common people's point of view, rural scenario in picturesque mannerism, refugee camping, a vivid account, the karmas of biggest migration of minority and majority people alike. So the sordid picture painted by the author of the eventual mishaps and reprehensible actions due to partition could not be separated from the urge of the outraging the modesty of womanhood. It has been boisterous and erotically narrated by the author to arouse revulsion, if at all lazy, and has been uprooted like me, a constable of Jhelum at the Lahore railway station itself would have abducted her. The Sankoch would have been looking helpless, and if she would have reached the camp by escaping the clutches of the police constables and military personnel, by all means, and then the big car elaters, who appears to be benevolent, bringing sweets and clothes, would have taken her to their big bungalows and would have filled the cup of her rooms with whole-hearted arms to the brim till it would have overflowed and outturned the palms. So I'm just going to conclude my paper. A commemorative, skillful, prophetic verse uttered by the author, some of the whole episodes of partition. Karmavali is not a fiction but a treatise written by a traveler who saw the inflames train to India and train to Pakistan. Both the trains had heaps of human bodies with oozing blood from the compartments. Kashmiri Lal Jakir relates this tale of tormented life, spans and sojourns, which have been penned out to ease his pent-up emotions. It is for the posterity to judge and abide self-restraint and respect of human values and adopt the path of peaceful coexistence. He said at the last of the novel, वो चला जाएगा जख्मों की तिजारत करके मुद्दतों शहर में उस शख्स का चर्चा होगा. So he will leave the scene after selling his wounds for time to come, city be agog with his death. Thank you so much.
The time to 4 to 5 minutes. Next paper presenter is Ramika Sindhvi, and she will be presenting her paper on War, Violence, Memory in the Post-Independence Bangladesh, a study of Tehmima Anam's The Good Muslim.
Be a part of this conference. I'm sorry I couldn't make it yesterday, the first day, but I'll try and compensate and also make up for the loss. I'll be examining Tehmima Anam's second novel, again a prize-winning novel, much acclaimed work, and she's a Bangladeshi writer, very, very young, and lives in London. At the same time, is a product of cultural friction and religiosity which she presents in her work. Like I said, she's a Bangladeshi writer, novelist, columnist, and of course, is one of the fast emerging and respected voices of South Asian literature, as we know today. Because of her comments on global affairs, I think she can be looked at this conference as an emerging voice that does serve as a very important, significant, and interesting interpretation of what's happening in the world around us, especially South Asia. The work that I'm looking at is The Good Muslim, which is a story of, it's actually part of a planned trilogy. She wrote her first book called, it's part of the Bengal trilogy. The first book was The Golden Age, where she talks about this generation, which continues in the second book, and I'm told that, I read somewhere that she's also going to shortly come out with the third one, where she continues to talk about the generation of a family who lived through the war of Bangladesh's independence from Pakistani occupation, and then goes on up in, to the aftermath of the 1971 war. So it's actually interesting to trace, how she begins with the first book. This is the second one, The Good Muslim, and of course the third one should be out perhaps end of this year, early next year. Now, like any good literary work, we also have to, make sure that when we talk about politics, partition, and South Asia and other such South Asian and other such affairs, we should make sure that we are exploring the literariness of our work, because we are not here to make political comments. Because my work also looks at religious fundamentalism, Islamic religious fundamentalism. So it's a very fine balance that one has to keep. So she talks about this book in terms of a story that encompasses historical, political, and social tragedy, which does not mean that it's a political novel. It's just that her themes are politicized. So I think it makes her a very relevant, very interesting, and significant writer. And especially because she's so young, she's in her late 30s. I think we must follow her work and see what she has to say in the third book. The tale is a moving narrative, like I mentioned, religious fundamentalism, especially Islamic radicalism. And she explores this problem of religious bigotry and fanaticism, zeal, trespassing into the territory of bigotry and extremist views. But she looks at it from the lens of a family, because she's exploring, a story through generations. So, she begins with the mother, and then these are the brother and sister in this book. And of course, in the third book, I think she'll probably take the brother-son story forward. So it's interesting because she's looking at it from the lens of a family. It's a very intimate view, and therefore it becomes a literary work for us more so than a political statement on the Bangladeshi War of Independence, because we're not going into why it happened and why the 1971 war had to take place and East Bangladesh and Pakistani occupation and all that. So I found this book appealing because of the particular aspects which people from English literature like us also like to point out in classes when we teach novels, when we teach them to approach a novel with specific issues. So I thought a non-linear history. Linear history is what history textbooks will tell us. 71 happened, then 75 happened, and 80 happened. But we have to look at what did not happen in terms of the history books not telling us. So I find this book very interesting for the non-linear history that it gives us. It gives us cultural friction, which is very important because the present seminar is on South Asian literature. No literature can emerge out of there being no culture. So we really need to go back to the basics. Anam is exploring war, religion, and extremism, and she's linking it to nation building through family. I think these are hugely important issues, because you can't talk about society till you talk about family, you can't talk about nation till you have looked at a society in particular. So I think they're tremendously well linked, and she's done a fine job, considering she has kept made it a very conscious decision to not make it preachy. It's not a preachy novel at all. She's not taking sides, and she's not even saying that religion is bad. She's just presenting what she thinks has been taken or pushed to the extreme. Of course, there's the whole idea of national victory and liberation. Of course, Bangladesh was ecstatic, when it was declared an independent nation. But as sensitive citizens of any country, we should also be looking at what independence brought in its wake to Bangladesh. I think it was anything but joy in the hearts of the people, because suddenly idealism, the whole concept and construct of idealism got ruthlessly destroyed. And what we face in India today post-independence, I don't think this is what Gandhi envisioned for an independent nation for us as well. So the idea of liberation and how it gets corrupted by a few individuals who decide the course of or the destiny of a country. And also let's be very careful about the whole nation versus country debate. I think nation is a more expansive term in terms of how you build its people. So I'm not really talking in terms of geographical boundaries. And what makes it a literary piece is that how beautifully she weaves the personal and the political, and she uses the common thread of loss. So the loss for a nation, the loss that a family faces because the son gets into religious fanaticism, the daughter completely